Hey everyone, my name is Paul Hegedus and I'm a PhD student at Montana State University working with Bruce Maxwell. And today I'm going to be talking about digital data, what's available on farms, how we get it and put it into a format that's usable for farmers to supplement their existing knowledge. So as you might know, in the United States, we're in a case where we have average farm sizes increasing with the number of farms decreasing, meaning that farmers have more land every year that they need to manage. Yet at the same time, the amount of data that's being generated on farms and about farms is exponentially increasing, meaning that we can use data to supplement farmer knowledge when they might not have the time to be as in tune with the land that they're managing. So this presentation is about what data is out there available on farms and for farms, and how do we put it together into a format that's usable by farmers. An example of one type of data that's available from farms or about farms that we gather from satellite imagery is NDVI, which is a vegetation index, basically measuring the greenness. And so as you can see on these maps flashing by for every year, we can map out what the greenness was on your land over a certain time range, and we can use this to supplement farmer knowledge of maybe what management happened in the past. As it flipped through at the beginning, you can see that there was evidence of strip trials, and then you can see when, what years crop fallow was being performed on each field. And so this is one case of how digital data can supplement farmer knowledge. Another way is through facilitating on-farm experimentation. So at Montana State University, we have the On-Farm Precision Experiments Project. And basically, it's just a cycle of experimentation that we do every year, starting with a design of an experiment. This could be seeding rates or nitrogen rates, where you create a design, you collect data, you put it together into a format that you can use for analysis, and then use the models that you develop for your crop response, such as yield or protein, to your input, and create a prescription that's either an experiment or is optimized based off of maximizing yield or protein or net return. And so today, I'm going to be talking about data collection and data aggregation, but tune in to Sasha Lowen's presentation to learn about the analysis and the prescription generation steps. So, as we all probably know, we can gather a bunch of data from farms just based off of the equipment that's there, such as combines where you have yield monitors. We've also installed protein monitors on combines that we work with, which measure the grain protein content, but these can also be calibrated to get oil content or starch, depending on the crop that you're using. Additionally, we can gather input data from sprayers and seeders. And then there's sort of supplemental on-farm data, such as electrical conductivity or pH from Varus machines, drone supply imagery, as well as weather stations. Additionally, there's a tremendous amount of satellites that are orbiting the Earth, which are gathering data all the time. And so we can use that to gather information about farms at different temporal and spatial frequencies, and gather things like vegetation indices, like I was showing NDVI before. We can calculate other greenness measures like NDRE and CIRE. And these satellites also measure things like topographic variables, such as elevation, slope, aspect, topographic position index, which is just a measure of the amount of mounds and divots in fields. And we also get climate data, such as precipitation and temperature, from which we can calculate growing degree days. And then combined with this satellite information and ground-based measurements, there's more and more algorithms that are calculating things like soil data. So we get soil moisture, texture, density, clay, water, sand contents, and pH that we're gathering from these remote sensing sources. And so these are available at different temporal and spatial scales, ranging from the kilometer scale down to 10 meters. So we're getting some pretty dense temporal and spatial measurements that we can use to supplement farmer information on farms. In terms of data collection, gathering on-farm data is becoming relatively easier through sources like My John Deere and Trimble Connect. These are cloud-based platforms where You go out, you combine or you spray, and then when you bring your equipment back to the barn, it connects with Wi-Fi and sends that data up into the cloud. And then you can share that with people using an API key. So the farmers that we work with have enabled me access, so I can just log into my John Deere, go to their farm, and download data from it. But also, the USB stick still always works, so we can just go out there, plug it into a yield monitor, get the data, and then leave, you know. Remote sensing data is a little bit more opaque, even for researchers and consultants to gather. You can either go directly to the satellite source and download imagery, but there's also open source repositories that just store all of the satellite information. So things like Google Earth Engine, Open Data Cube are available for gathering the satellite data. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of coding skills. And so this is an opportunity where this information is sort of gatekept by academics and researchers and represents an opportunity to make it more accessible for farmers to use and download and implement into their farmer decision-making process. And so once we have all that data, whether we gather it from on farms or from remote satellite sources, we have to put it together. And so this is a process we call data aggregation, where basically we want to put it all into one data set. And so with this map on the left, we have our yield points measured from a combine. And then above it, there's different raster layers, which are gathered from satellite imagery. So in this case, I just put bulk density, precipitation, NDVI, and pH. But for every point, we want to know what each of those other covariates are at that location. And so what we do is basically skewer it like a kebab, where at each yield point, you have bulk density, precipitation, NDVI, and pH measures where it intersects with those overlaying layers. So you can think of those as your meats, your peppers, your onions. And so once you do that for all the points in the field, you can think about putting each of those individual kebabs on a plate, put them sideways, and think of that as a table. And so each row in this table is a different location where we have yield, and then we have the intersecting measure of things like slope, aspect, NDVI, precipitation, soil moisture, all those other things that we're gathering about farms. And so in conclusion, the three main takeaways I want you to get from this is that there's a massive stream of data that's available on and about farms, whether it's from equipment or satellite sources. We have this tremendous capability of gathering data nowadays, but it needs to be accessible to farmers. And so industry has really sort of paved the way with on-farm data through My John Deere or Trimble. You can just get data sent directly to the cloud, which you can download directly, or through sort of the more old school approach of the USB stick. But it's really important to remember that digital data supplements farmer knowledge, and it's not there to replace it. And so that's something that researchers and industry and consultants need to remember, is that even though we have all this data on and about farms, it's no substitute for what you as farmers see when you're out there in the field actually working on it. And so we need to develop decision support systems that aren't making decisions for you, but give you recommendations that you can choose from using your expertise. So I just want to thank you for your time and for listening to me. And remember to tune into Sasha Lilland's presentation to see about how we analyze this data once we have it all together and make prescriptions and experiments and make optimum management maps.